Oh, right! You guys have perfect timing. We're going to be switching back into gear of surviving in the Nightmare Zone. And this time we have a rather pressing issue to discuss regarding hostile humans and the necessary tactics for taking them on. Safely. Come have a snack with us and we'll talk all about it.
Welcome back, guys. Grab some cookies if you like.
So this one is very straightforward. Hostile enclaves. Ever since the Nightmare Zone, taking on other humans has proven to be much more threatening than a horde of Zeds with 3 Ferals, 2 Juggernauts, and a Screamer just for fun. The speed at which one can die compared to the other 3 zones has been given a ridiculous boost.
Well, how bad can it really be, London? I mean, we've all seen how incompetent other survivors are against threats like Ferals, Juggernauts, and Hordes. What makes them so threatening in the Nightmare Zone?
Fair question. Let's get started from there then. Junior? So yes, I would absolutely agree with you that computer survivors are pretty awful at defending themselves, especially with Juggernauts. The only time this really changes is when they are armed and with other computer allies. The tables take a massive turn when they are hostile towards a given human player. When playing in the Nightmare Zone, hostile humans are capable of frequently pulling off headshots without any warning. Now, this does not mean one dies immediately, but one can be instantly incapacitated. Your health is reduced to around 10 units or less, and any additional damage will guarantee one's demise. Trying to outshoot hostile humans is extremely risky stuff though.
Alright, London, then what would you propose for dealing with humans? Usually I can just run in quickly to close the distance and use melee against them. Or I'll just use fire.
Easier said than done. Even up close, an armed hostile survivor will still use their ranged weapon. Not to mention, even with melee combat, the damage they can dish out will put one down in around 4 strikes. The same cannot be said for one's enemies though, who can withstand a series of blows before falling. And even when they are down, it takes a substantial amount of damage to eliminate them. I would say options are limited, but the few that exist are reliable. So to start us off, in first place for effective measures, we have the controversial Zombait. Although not exactly the easiest thing to come by, Zombait is probably the best measure for attracting Zeds to a targeted location. As I had just recently discussed, survivors tend to perform quite badly against multiple Zeds, so logic would dictate to attract Zeds to one's target. Alternatively, one can also wave a horde of Zeds, ideally with Juggernauts, to the target enclave and watch the rest happen. This is ultimately more risky, but not impossible. Just don't draw attention back to yourself once the Zeds have noticed the target enclave.
I've used this tool before, and it can bring quite a party to the area of the zombie. But at the same time, I've also witnessed enclaves successfully fight off a large horde. This is usually the case when they are armed, making common Zeds very light work for them. Juggernauts, however, can still do a lot of damage. But Zombait is not that predictable, in that different Zeds will show up based on what is around. Also, with the threats that you mentioned earlier, one of my concerns with Zombait is that one will have to get close in order to throw it accurately. Isn't this a major concern in the Nightmare Zone, since you open yourself up to getting shot down?
That is a valid concern, and one that I have had a bad experience with. Unfortunately, it seems that Zombait is a bit heavier than other throwables. I've even tried using stealth to get closer to a hostile enclave only to realize that they take notice of an approaching human. There are countermeasures to this though, that being smoke grenades. Unfortunately, these are not craftable, but they do work for what they are meant for. Alternatively, one can simply use close-by cover, whether it is with one's own vehicle or a nearby fence. Just be prepared to defend yourself should they rush in your direction.
So you made it clear that trying to outshoot hostile humans is something to avoid. But what are you supposed to do against an enclave that can hold their own against the crowd?
Well, this will accelerate my next guide point. Although hostiles are very dangerous with ranged combat, always bring a rifle. Ideally, an accurate, quiet, and easy to control rifle with decent effective range. Now, the point is not necessarily to take them head on, but instead to apply pressure and make crucial headshots. That way, when a given human goes down, the ensuing horde should finish the job.
Alright. Now, let's just say one is a complete blunder with their shots. Or let's just say that these survivors fall, but keep getting up despite horde pressure. Then, should one close the distance and finish the job themselves?
The only time this is ever a viable option is when there is only one hostile human, because then their chances of getting up are essentially eliminated, unless the horde comes after you instead. But otherwise, I find that the best way to eliminate an enemy trying to get back up is to use bloater gas. Bloater gas does not affect Zeds, but it is devastating to humans. This should almost guarantee the end of a hostile human, especially if there is also a crowd on top of them. Just don't squander your throws.
Hold on a sec, London. First zombie, now bloater gas? What's next? Zombie repellent?
Well, actually...
Where does one actually get these tools, aside from the strange visitors that show up at your base anyway?
Alright, so it is possible to find an infirmary facility mod called the Advanced Biochem Station, which allows one to craft their own zombate and bloater gas. Now, continuing on, it is also an option to create bloater grenades that can fit into a launcher and use that way. Although I personally prefer to use throwables, so that I can keep my firearm handy.
I see. Alright, London, so all of this is best case scenario. What about if one somehow makes a mistake and they end up face to face with hostiles? Are there any low-risk methods for dealing with that?
A scenario like this ultimately comes down to skill. Not just aim, but the actual skills the survivor has. For those that have seen my skills guide, you would understand that gunslinging is probably the best method for eliminating close-range targets efficiently. The same goes for hostile humans. The pressure of having to return fire and take down targets is for the most part relieved when one can simply aim snap to different targets and score immediate headshots.
How about this then? You said when one receives a headshot, they are incapacitated and reduced to minimal health. If they do manage to get up, what is the next measure for ensuring one's survival?
You bring up an important question, and this is vital to one's survival should they be pushed into such a situation. If one is shot down, but given enough time to revive themselves, definitely run, dodge frequently, and find cover. Now that's only half the battle. When one's health is reduced to such a small amount, no amount of painkillers or bandages will help. There are only two options one has, and possibly three. One can either travel with a first aid kit, or call a medical advice on the radio commands. If one has an allied medical enclave, they can also call on them and replenish a significant amount of health. The thing is with medical advice is that it can actually relieve some of the trauma one will endure during combat. Otherwise, one can take the same advice I gave in my Plague Heart guide and simply run away to fight another day.
That actually sounds extremely useful. Now, London, in my experience, hostile humans can appear differently. Sometimes there is a hostage rescue scenario, or sometimes hostiles will close in on allies that need your help. I highly doubt zombate is a good idea then, right?
This is correct, but let's take these on one at a time. When hostiles are closing in on a particular location, you have the home field advantage, in which case bloater gas, fire, and of course one's firearm will be the main tools. Usually in situations like this, one also has the help of whatever ally they're aiding, but in hostage rescue situations, the procedure is a bit more surgical and risky, because you do not have the home field advantage, and you must ensure the safety of a given hostage or captive. These can take place indoors or outdoors. One strategy I've had for outdoors is using snipers and going for headshots, since zombait is too hazardous to the captives. If one does not have a sniper, or if the hostiles are not visible, they will have to make the risky decision of going in closer with a rifle of some sort and employing an alternative offensive measure such as bloater gas or fire. Bloater gas, however, is hazardous to captives. When performing an indoor rescue, it will take a good amount of creativity, but my best performance has been from using small explosives or distractions loud enough to attract some Zeds at the back of a given structure to draw out hostiles, or at the front to distract them while I sneak in the back. Once one of them decides to emerge, pick them off quickly with bloater gas or firearms. One thing to keep in mind is that the captive you're trying to rescue will simply just have their hands up randomly, and they will not attack any Zeds that come into contact with them. Hence, Zed saturation must remain low. Eventually, you should be able to gradually eliminate each hostile with the method I just discussed earlier. Alternatively, one can sneak in and speak with the captive to get them to follow you and escape with minimal combat. This of course only works if you can distract the hostiles at the front of a given structure while you sneak in the back. However, it is usually very messy work and does not always go as planned, if the hostiles prefer to target you over the Zeds, for example. These circumstances are rare, but they do happen and require a lot of planning and luck, as the captive will sometimes die during the whole ordeal since they do not defend themselves. Usually missions like this will also lead an enclave to immediately become your ally, so it might be a high priority case if one wants to succeed.
One more thing, London. I don't know if this is a glitch or not, but I have come across traders that immediately turn hostile after I have gotten close to them. What is your suggestion to this one?
I definitely would not call it a glitch, but a small part of State of Decay that is eerie but praiseworthy. In a real apocalypse, you never know who's out to trap you or shake your hand. I've had similar experiences myself, and unfortunately, the cautionary note I have is to treat all non-allied contacts as potential threats. Even friendly enclaves can turn on you, although this one comes with more of a warning if you pay attention to what they are saying. This one is also rare, but it does happen. All I can say is keep yourself armed and approach any trader or questionable enclave with a gun pointed to their head.
Fair enough. So overall, when dealing with hostile humans, you would say to primarily lead with zombie. Always bring a quiet, accurate firearm. Finish the leftovers with bloater gas. Ensure you have the gunslinging skill. Either bring a first aid kit or have a radio medic ready. Run away to fight another day. Bring a sniper to outdoor hostage situations. Be creative with indoor hostage situations. And never trust anybody that is not an ally.
Yes, I would say that just about sums it up. Thank you, Mascara. If you ask me, dealing with hostile enclaves is a relatively rare thing, but it always helps to be prepared for it. Personally, all I can say is avoid them as much as possible. Losing survivors is just simply not worth it, at least not in this onion's opinion. The crazy aim they have will simply frustrate most people, and perhaps leave you with regret. It has done so for me anyway. Otherwise though, that is all this onion.
And this onion.
That is all these onions have to say. Thank you very much for stopping by, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Bye guys, I hope to see you back again.